Sam Walker. The Pine Ridge, Indiana Indian Reserve has had an alarmingly high suicide rate among their youth in its beliefs. An urban legend is responsible. The land is being stalked by an ancient evil entity that takes on the form of Walking Sam. Like the tall man, Slender Man, and the long-feared Stick Man, this creature feeds on living infections, their minds, and altering their thoughts. In the case of Walking Sam, his evil bidding is collecting the soul of suicide so he doesn't have to wander the earth alone. He confesses the already lost, depressed, hormonal adolescents that they aren't worthy of life, and that they should end it. Stands around 7 feet tall, has no mouth, and has gangly limbs. When his arms are outstretched, you can see the bodies of Lakota men and women hanging from them since December of 2014. Pine Ridge has had 103 suicide attempts, with 9 people succeeding. The youngest was only 12, and the oldest was just 24. There have been attempts at mass suicides on the ground. Hopefully, church leader Pastor John II Bulls discovered and perverted one of these plans from being carried out. He and a few other adults have found a group of teenagers with noses already hanging from the trees. Another group of teens, all females, tried to carry out a similar plan but were stopped in time. Why are they doing it? Tribe leaders, clergymen, local mental health professionals, and the law enforcement are scratching their heads. What if not some great evil is infecting the minds of so many young people? And Pine Ridge is a poverty, is it abuse? Or is it the creature kids call Walkin' Sam? Story 2. The Boo Hag. The Boo Hag is the South Carolina most popular urban legend. According to the Thrillist, is the Boo Hag. While it sounds like something more likely to have been yelled at a person being pursued during the Salem witch trial. According to the legend, it is much more sinister. Boo hags are skinless beings that creep into people's homes in the low country, climb on their chests, and gain vitality by sucking out their breath, and have a nasty habit of tearing off victims' skin and wearing it to keep themselves warm. According to Thrillist, the Boo hag comes from Gola folk tales, which has tied to voodoo. The island packet reported it could leave its victims suffering in paralysis or even death. Story 3. Justin, 32, New Jersey. Justin played with a Ouija board. One day with several of his friends, they asked questions, but instead of asking questions, moving into certain letters, it began to move in a strange pattern. It went to all four corners of the board and made an X. He tells readers the guess that it just went into the circles. The next time he used the board, it was a different friend at his house. Again, the board moved in the strange same pattern. I felt like I was some kind of hex. Continues later that night when he was sleeping. He felt a forceful hand grab his arm and wake him up. Everyone else in the house was sound asleep. Story 4. Abby, 20, Florida. Abby was in her room one night after playing with a Ouija board. Earlier that day, as she was getting ready for bed, her computer screen changed from black to blue. It turned on by itself. She turned the computer off again. The computer clicked itself back to life. Anxious, Abby unplugged the computer completely, and then the unpowered computer started back up again. She burnt the Ouija board in the backyard that same night. But was it a good thing? The stories in Ohio. Page 24. Ohio. The first time I used an Ouija board, Page tells, I was about 6 or 7 and I was with my mom and older sister, who was about 15 at the time. The family had just moved to a new house, much bigger and much older than the one they lived in previously. That night, Paige, her mother, and her sister were eating pizza on the living room floor since they didn't have all their furniture set up yet. They put a fire on to ease the chill of the fall air. After dinner, her sister pushed her mom to let them play with their Ouija board. As they were using it, Paige continues a box in the living room that had some books and literally flew across the room. Shortly after that, the fire unexpectedly went out and the mother was so shaken that she took the girls to their grandmother's house to spend the night. This story is called The Headless Century. During the American Revolution, a century for the British who was expecting returning soldiers was instead greeted by colonists led by General Francis Marin, famously known as the Swamp Fox, at a plantation outside Charleston. His head was cut off, and his body stingered around before crumbling to the ground in a pool of blood. It's said that to this very day, his headless ghost stalks the grounds of the former plantation. He is dressed as a British dragoon and leaves a trail of blood behind him. According to the local lord, he is still searching for his head to this very day, even though the plantation where he died is now the site of a golf course and restaurant. He still hunts this very location till this very day. This story is called Crybaby Bridge in South Carolina. In this bit of local folklore, a young mother was on her way home late at night. On a Highway 601, her husband was due to return. The very next day, after 3 years of military service, she was anxious to be back in time to meet him and wanted to put her child to bed. In a rush, she drove over the Flat Creek Bridge, quickly leading to an accident in which she and her child were thrown from the car. While the mother did her best to try and follow the sounds of her child's crying in the dark, she found nothing, and the child's crying eventually stopped. It is said till this very day that the mother died of a heartbreak on the spot. According to the legend, if you go back to Flat Creek Bridge and call out "Cry baby, cry baby," you will hear the sound of her child crying. Louisiana may famous for its cruel creature, but some are South Carolina is known for the way of life shared by about a half a million slave descents up and down the coast. Brought spirits known as the Boo Hag to South Carolina's folklore. Concentrated in South Carolina believe in when people die, the spirit stays behind on earth. If that spirit is bad, it will become a Boo Hag. The spectral creature use spells to manipulate people and feed off them. When they sleep, they are craftily corpse-like spirits that smell like rotten flesh and steal a living person's skin to move around unidentified. During the day at night, they shed their skin, and they look for a person on who to feed from. Or in a ride, if you wake up exhausted after a full night of rest, they say you may have just been visited by a boo hag.